Chris Reynolds, the man, the myth, the legend. You've read the book now, see the movie. How cool is this? 500 episodes, man. How does it feel?
500 episodes. So I have to start this off with a little transparency because a little transparency goes a long way.
Please.
So I started podcasting at podcast number 100. And so
Wait, can I do that with my workouts? Can I start at rep 100 and then like walk out not sweating?
I know. But to be fair, like we now have the high performance episodes, which we've published about 50 of those. So we're really technically about 450, and we'll definitely hit over 500 within the next few months. And I just want to start that out being fully transparent. The reason why I did that is because, back in the day when we had like written checks, some people still use those, but not a lot.
Tell me more.
Somebody said once, I think it was my mom, and she said, always start on your checkbook with number 1,000, Chris, because then the banks don't know that you just started banking with that bank. And I was like, that's genius, Mom. Mm-hmm. And so when I started podcasting, I was like, we just start with podcast number 100. It kind of makes sense. And but now I have to explain myself every time when people are like, Chris, you have 500 episodes, and I'm like, nah, it's actually 400. Well, 450. But I wasn't going to let the 500 number go without like a celebration. So
sure. You know what? As far as I'm concerned, this is number 500 because, it's a heavy lift. You've done a lot. You've produced a whole lot. And my kids are taking new math in school, so I no longer trust numbers. So.
Is this the thing? Like we don't trust science, we don't trust numbers, right?
You know what? I'm choosing the narrative that supports my opinion. That's where we're going. So this is number 500, and I am thrilled to be here to talk to you about it all. So.
Thank you. Well, and I've probably been on about 40 or 50, so that's close. Like 500, like 450 of our podcast, and then 50 that I was on.
I find that strange that you haven't been on more.
Really?
Is it more comfortable for you to be an interviewer than an interviewee?
No, I'd prefer to be the interviewee. It's easier. Less prep, you just show up and talk.
That's right. Well, that's all you have to do today. You just show up and we're going to ask you questions and you're going to be vulnerable. Maybe we'll cry. I don't know. This is definitely going to turn into a Lifetime movie. I have faith that this is happening.
Oh, so. I thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being here, Adam, and facilitating and testing out your skills as an interviewer.
That's right. I have always been on the other side getting interviewed. And so I feel like someone's given me like Thor's hammer and I am worthy. Ooh. And I've got all this power. Yeah. I want to hear so much. So can I jump in?
Yes, please. You're leading. You're Thor. Hammer Sweet.
Away. I have known you for years. We've hung out in Bangkok. We've hung out on an island on the Adriatic off of Croatia. We have been all over the world, hung out with you. One of my favorite people in the world. And there's so much I don't know about you. Because, when we're hanging out, we don't say, tell me your life story.
Right.
Where'd you come from? So could you maybe take 5 minutes and just start off with the narrative, the hero's journey from zero to where you are today? Like sum everything up in 5 minutes.
I'll try. When you tell your own story, you never think it's as cool as everybody else's story. Or maybe there's people out there that think it's, that think their story's cooler than everybody else's. But so I always have like, and if anybody else does this, a bit of like, insecurity that comes up right when we tell our story. It's like, is my story good enough to be told? So I'll tell it, I'll share it, and then you can tell me if it's worthy of being shared.
That's fair.
Yeah,
that's fair.
So I was born in 1980 and to Barbara Verlene Reynolds and Robert Paul Reynolds at 1:08 p.m. And my parents are from Missouri, which is where I grew up. And Missouri is one of those places where growing up there, you don't know how unique of a place it is until you go out and travel the world and see the perspective of a place like Missouri or middle America or rural, wherever you're from, or smaller type of region, wherever you're from, that, life is different there. And life was there very different, compared to my life now for sure. It was comfortable. It was my mom's family, or quite a few of them are farmers. So I got to spend a lot of time. Farmers were my heroes growing up, the guys that wear bibbed overalls and John Deere ball caps,
Mm-hmm.
And growing up, I wanted to be, first, I wanted to be a baseball player. My dad put that in my mind, and then that went away because talent wasn't there. And then I wanted to be a farmer. And I was like, that's the dream. And what I realize now is that the dream that I had was because naturally one of my core values is freedom. That was the only way that I knew to achieve freedom. And I had an uncle that I was close with, and he had a farm, but also was like a jack of all trades, and he would go fix roofs, or build homes or whatever. And I was like, well, I'll just work with Uncle Bobby, and we'll build stuff around Missouri, and buy some cows, and farm to farm sort of thing. And that's what I wanted to do, clear up until I hit this kind of, so I went to high school, and I went to undergrad as a major in agricultural business, and clear up into the point where I didn't want to leave college because I was having so much fun. So I decided to go to grad school. And when I went to grad school, so I stayed at that small Missouri school, Northwest Missouri State, and I went to grad school there. And I got a degree in just regular business, not agricultural business. Um, and that opened my world. We had this course called International Business, and we started learning about economics in India and the UK, and globalization and all of this stuff. And my mind was just absolutely blown. And also during that time, my mom bought me the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which
Mm-hmm.
also has been a pillar book for many people, I think. And I was like, well, I could always go back to, I talked to my Uncle Bobby at this time. I was like, there's this internship in New Hampshire I want to take. I don't know what to do after grad school, da da da. He's like, you can always come back to Missouri. If you don't like what you're doing, you can come back. And I was like, that's a fair point. So I took the internship in New Hampshire, and it was selling books door to door for the Southwestern Company, which is a phenomenal internship company. It teaches you business skills. They sold us on the idea that you'll be your own boss, independent contractor selling books door to door. It was awesome. Learned sales skills. That was my first unofficial business. Spent the summer there. Sold $12,000 in books, in New Hampshire, and and just after that, it was like the love of living abroad. At that time, abroad was outside of Missouri. The love of living abroad, in New Hampshire, and then after that, I went down to Florida. But this travel nomadic bug kind of like set in. And
And how old were you at this point when you're
I,
heading?
I finished grad school 23,
Cool.
and I had an old pickup truck, GMC pickup truck from
Yes.
1987, and I had a blanket in the back, and I would just drive wherever I needed to drive and sleep wherever I needed to sleep, and so that was phase one of Chris's life.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that whole imagery of you like coming from a place where feeling super connected. You have this idea of freedom, you have this thing that's really drawing to you. You go have more experiences, and rather than saying no to a thing, you're saying yes and. Well, I can have
Hmm.
freedom, and if I go abroad, then I can value where I came from. And I'm pretty sure you didn't think it all the way through, but I just like
No.
how your autopilot, your natural tendency is taking you towards adventure, taking you towards freedom. But it
Yeah.
sounds like it's all based on the fact you did have some kind of security where you always knew you could go back home, which I
Yeah.
don't know that a lot of our digital nomad friends have that kind of freedom.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, and I see that quite often. People grew up as, not close to their family now, and so they're traveling to kind of get away, or maybe not or maybe their family moved around a lot. I see that quite often, and I'm very fortunate with the family upbringing that I have, because there was always a security blanket there, where if I go and spend a year abroad, and shit hits the fan and I go broke, I could always go back home and
Mm-hmm.
have that. And definitely, I think for the nomads, location independent entrepreneurs, anybody out there, is that family base for those kids in the future is essential for them being a limitless human being for whatever dreams they want to go after in their lives. Having that, hey, mom and dad, are still back here, family's still back here for you. If you ever need we've got your back, sort of thing.
Yeah, my dad always said, if things go wrong, please come move back into our basement. We miss you.
My dad is still saying that,
Right, right.
I'm like,
That's special. So phase one, we put a bow on it. You're moving into phase two. What does that look like?
so phase two, I landed in Phoenix, Arizona, and it's because I had a friend there, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad as mentioned, and I wanted to get in a real estate game. This was mid 2000s, so I think I went down there in 2005. And the city is a hot city, not just physically hot, but like for a young professional, it was a fantastic place to be. Real estate was booming. I got involved in the mortgage business for a couple years. Learned a lot from that experience, and just had a really good time down in Phoenix. And so then after those it was a year and 9 months in the mortgage business, I learned what I had gone there to learn. And I came across this network marketing company called Nouveau Riche, where they sold real estate investing packages at $20,000 each. And if you signed up for it, you got 2 years of real estate investing and entrepreneur education from really high, really successful real estate people. And you got the opportunity to sell that package to other people at 50% commission. So if I sold it to you, Adam, I'd get $10,000. And I was like, wow, that's, I'm sitting here selling mortgages on the phone all day. I can just transfer those skills over to this real estate investing education. And selling a mortgage is definitely easier than selling a $20,000 real estate investing network marketing business.
Sure. I can see that.
But we figured it out. I learned so many entrepreneur skills there. They had really smart individuals, smart entrepreneurs working with the company, and also got involved with some personal development organizations at that time. So my growth was just like hockey stick, growth for a young guy in his 20s. And just soaking up new ways of mindset that I would learn from both the real estate company and from the personal development companies, and just had a really great time until the '08 recession hit, and a lot of the funding for that for people that were signing up to be a part of that company came from credit sources. And '08 recession hit, boom, all of our income dried up, and I went broke. I mean, I had a 350Z sports car that I had just bought. Nice. I lived in a sexy apartment in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we were just having a great time. And then it was like, people talked about that recession happening about a year before it happened. And we just really weren't prepared to know how hard it was going to hit us. And so there was one point where I had a good friend, and I could always go to his house and hang out when I was like depressed and broke. And I was like, I don't have any money, Dave. I'm literally like, I don't have any money whatsoever. And he's like, bullshit, like, you've got some money. I was like, no. And I was like, let's call my bank account. And we called the bank account, and I had 54 cents in my bank account. And he just died laughing. He's one of those friends, like, just like you did, Adam, right? Then he just absolutely died laughing, and he goes, oh man, I didn't know how bad it was. And so he bought me pizza that day. I remember that day. I'll always remember that day. It was very nice of him. And then I went to just doing odd jobs, to make ends meet. I donated plasma. I would eat cans of green beans and corn for dinner, right? Water with cereal,
Yes. You're back in college.
I know.
Doing it. You're on a budget.
It was a tough experience, but I actually enjoyed the challenge of going through that. Plus I was still in my 20s, I knew I had plenty of recovery time. And I knew that one day, I'd get back, I would get to a point where I could help people and then we could learn from that experience. And that's actually kind of where the idea from these masterminds that you and I run now
Hmm.
came from, is that I knew when COVID hit, there was going to be a lot of entrepreneurs were going to suffer and have a really hard time. And I thought, well, let's mastermind, because I went through the '08 recession and went broke as a young entrepreneur, and maybe we can help some of those people.
So what's this? So you didn't end broke. I mean, I met you on a luxury island in Croatia, so you decided probably not to stay that way. What's the transition? I'm assuming we're moving towards phase three.
Yes, I guess that's phase three. Yeah. So synchronistically, this was really interesting how it happened. My best friend from college, he is a farmer back in the Midwest, and when I went broke, a few months later, 3 or 4 months later, I was hustling and doing catering jobs and some odds and end things here and there. And maybe it was maybe even a year later. I don't remember exactly. His wife passed away from a brain aneurysm just out of
Mm.
the blue. And so I went back for the funeral. I spent 3 weeks with him. And then I went back to Phoenix. And then his sister called me one day, and they couldn't find him. And they didn't know where he was. And they were really worried about him because his wife was just found out she was pregnant as well. So
Ooh.
their first baby, they were expecting it, a month and a half or so, 2 months in, and then she dies of a brain aneurysm. So he was going through some really hard things, and I was broke, and I called him up, and I was like, Joe, I'm gonna come back and just help you on the farm. I'm broke as hell. I lost my business. So we'll just support each other and figure this thing out. And so I went back and I worked on the farm with him. I helped him reestablish his life. I got some side. We actually had another friend in college that owned a landscaping business, so I got to work with him while I was working on the farm as well. And it was a really cool experience. Also, to be honest, like it
Hmm.
was just like we could be there for one another at the worst, the most difficult times in our lives, and we could support one another. And I spent 9 months back there, and before I ended up going back to Phoenix eventually again, to help reestablish him, and I get reestablished as well. And during this time when I was, I was living back and helping him on the farm. I picked up the book, The 4 Hour Work Week. And as soon as I read it, that was like, this is going to be my life. It's just, and he would make fun of me because he thought those books were like a scam. And he's like, don't get me started on that book. And I'm like, dude, this is going to be me. Like, I mark my word. And I just indulged that book. I remembered, when I would was working in a landscaping business, I would drive 100 miles a day to one job to next job to the next job.
Hmm.
And I had the 4 Hour Work Week audio CD that I would play as I was driving from one job to the next. And I soaked it up, man. And it started applying. Like, I started selling on Amazon when I was there, still back in the Midwest. And that was 2009. I wish I still stuck with that. I did it 6 months, and I was like, oh, this stuff doesn't work, and then just moved on to the next thing. Started building some niche websites online, and spent a year and a half back in Phoenix, building niche websites online, still doing some like odd jobs here and there, and eventually got to the point where I was like, I'm going, and bought a one-way ticket to Costa Rica, and had some money saved up, making a little bit of money online, and was going to go do the thing in Costa Rica, and I did.
Love that.
Yeah,
You're checking so many of the boxes. I always say like you're not a real entrepreneur until you flirted with bankruptcy or having no money,
thousand
where
percent.
right when everything goes wrong out of your control and you're like, all right, I got choices,
Yeah,
and they're all mindset choices. Is how am I going to endure through this? Because there's always something on the other end if you can stay in the game, right? And I
hmm
love that one of the ways you stayed in the game was you went and helped people. You acted from a place where
hmm
you were going through something and you're like, yep, this is who Chris is. I'm going to go help others while they're going through something too. And I think
yeah.
that's really very cool. Does that show up often in your life? when you
I
think
don't,
about it?
it wasn't a conscious thing at all. It wasn't like, some people were like, well, if you're in a bad spot, go help people. It'll change your
Sure,
mindset, right? It
sure.
was just like, that's just what I needed to do at the time.
Hmm.
And it felt right, sort of thing. Um, but, yeah, it was just, and I'm a helping guy anyway. Like I'm
Hmm.
kind of in a giver, like I have a strong giver, personality and helping personality. And so I think it's kind of natural.
Well, I love the story so far, and I want to check in with you, even if it stopped now. This is a good story. You should tell it a lot.
Okay, thanks, man. Thanks.
But you said something that I think is magical. You're going to Costa Rica, and
Mm,
now I'm expecting the I'm expecting phase 4 that I'm now classifying this.
yeah.
By the way, we're going to turn this into an ebook. I'm already sold on this. So phase 4, chapter 4, however you want to call it. Let's talk
Okay.
about Costa Rica.
Yeah, so I bought the one way ticket to Costa Rica, and I was dating a girl long term at that time. She came with me, and we were going to live the Costa Rican 4 hour work week dream.
Hmm.
Um, we actually started doing some contracting work online also while we were there, and then building a niche websites, and spent 13 months in Costa Rica. Like it was great. We didn't buy. We rented a 2 bedroom house, 5 minutes walk from the beach. I
Hmm.
was like, man, I'm checking so many boxes off in the 4 hour work week life. Like I hacked the system, right?
Winning.
And winning, yeah. One of the things that really did hit me pretty hard though, while in Costa Rica, because we were in a small town of about 10,000 people, surf village, is that I was lonely.
Mm.
And I couldn't figure out why. It took me actually a couple more years to really pinpoint it. It's that I didn't have my like-minded people. I didn't have like-minded entrepreneurs down there. I had surf buddies, I had bonfire on the beach buddies. I had my girlfriend, but I didn't have my like-minded personal growth entrepreneur type of people that really give me energy. So it wasn't till I landed in Barcelona in 2014 that I really realized that, and I started hanging around with other location independent type of entrepreneurs, and I was like, oh, these are my people. I
Hmm.
was like, I
Hmm.
gotta spend as much time as possible around them. But during that time, we did another cool thing is we started these charity projects. We did a charity project in Costa Rica. We climbed the tallest mountain in Costa Rica, raised up a bunch of money and gave it to a clinic there in Costa Rica that nuns ran, and took care of abandoned children.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I moved to Peru for 7 months, and I did a project with the natives there where we raised up a bunch of money and homesteaded land, so the children would have a farm to use as an agricultural school so they could learn how to grow other products other than just like rice and potatoes in their classroom. And so we homesteaded the land with the local folks, with the local families, and they came up, and it was really cool. We're on the side of the mountain in BFE Peru,
Right.
and just like hanging out with them and drinking their homemade beer with them as we're like, moving these rocks out of the dirt. And now that farm turned into I think a 12,000 square meter, the last I heard, 12,000 square meter farm that feeds not only the kids, but 12 families in the area as well, which is kind of cool. And then I eventually got over to Barcelona, and that's in Spain and Europe, and that's when I started realizing I needed some like-minded entrepreneurs to hang out with.
Well, I don't know if you're going to find that because I just wrote down location independent farmer. I mean,
Right, that's the next. That's a chapter I haven't created yet.
I mean, I'm excited to see what 2020, the decade of 2020 is going to hold because how cool. I just love the way that the life works, right? And you're
Uh-huh.
doing the 4 hour work week, you're doing all the life, you have the freedom. And then you show up right where you need to be, right at the right time, to use your entire upbringing, the fact that you went through trauma, the fact that you used work as a tool. I mean, everything goes perfect. So then when you land here in Peru, you're able to actually apply all this wisdom to have this huge change. And then you're like, peace, moving on. I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so cool.
Peace out. Here's some goodness. Like, go with it, you guys. I'm
That's right.
out. I gotta go do some other
Oh, I
work.
should put location independent startup farmer. You help us, you help
Yeah.
launch the thing, and then you're like, the system's running. You don't need me anymore. I'm on
my
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 way.
titles are getting grander and grander as you hear more of my story,
Absolutely
right?
right. Oh yeah. Don't worry. I'm gonna update your LinkedIn any minute. It's gonna
Ah,
be great.
yes.
So, all right, you've now you've crossed the ocean. You're now in Europe.
Uh-huh.
What's going on there?
Well, I had some roommates that were entrepreneurs, and we would set goals together. We would go out and enjoy the city of Barcelona together, and just have a really great time.
Mm,
And I thought, why? This is pre remote year and remote work, and before anybody was really doing it as a business. And I thought, why aren't people getting together and doing this co-living, co-working sort of thing? Because there's plenty of people that are living abroad, that work
mhm.
online, that can do this and building really awesome businesses while they do it. And so I was like, I put it out to the world and some forums that I belong to, and social media, and said, hey, if I rent a few apartments in Barcelona, do you guys want to spend 3 months here in 2015? And it signed up, it filled up. And I was like, wow, this is kind of a cool thing. So we would do masterminds when all those guys came to Barcelona. We'd do masterminds once a week. And I said, hey, I'm thinking about making this a business. What do you guys think? And overwhelmingly, everybody said, yeah, it's a great
Wow.
idea. And so I started what was then called the Entrepreneur House, and I started doing these cool business accelerators, co-living business accelerators, in different cities around the world. And and I loved it because we would gather these entrepreneurs, really awesome entrepreneurs. They would live in a new city for a month or so. We'd have fun together. We'd build business together. It was just a fun experience. And I did that for 3 years until I really realized to scale that business, it was a lot of work that I didn't want to do. And so I took all the productivity stuff out of that and started to put it into a remote type of brand, which is now the business method. A remote brand, a remote more style of business. And even though I was hosting remote entrepreneurs and I was a remote entrepreneur myself, I was then committed to be in every city that we were hosting events at and hosting something at. So so then I put all that stuff into online, productivity, goal setting, mindset, and now like brain optimization sort of thing. That's all online under the business method brand.
So it's almost like the Entrepreneur House was your crucible where you
Mm-hmm.
just tossed all these people together. And it was live fire exercise on how do you start businesses, run business, get efficient, depend on each other. And you got to play with this whole ecosystem of folks who were coming together. And it was like a accelerating not just their business but accelerating your understanding on how entrepreneurship works,
Mm-hmm.
what leads to success, what holds you back and creates friction. And I love the fact that you're like, yep, I've learned what I need here. I've got my lessons. I don't need to scale the crucible. I'm going
Uh-huh.
to take the stuff that's super valuable that I've learned, and I'm going to package it up in a way that I can access more people. Because I think I heard you say that having to actually show up in every single city and every single place, your bandwidth problem was you.
100% bottleneck right
Mm-hmm.
there.
Mm-hmm.
And hosting all these people and learning from them, I was like, these this is the type of business that I want. For I'm hosting events for the people that have business types of models that I want, and I don't have that type of business model myself. And I'm like, okay, so what's the next phase, next chapter? But when I was around, because that was the first time since like 2008 that I had been around serious entrepreneurs, and 4 hour work week style of entrepreneurs, right? Even if they didn't only work 4 hours a week, and the intelligence of really the intelligence mixed with the wisdom of an entrepreneur from going over all the hurdles that it takes, the highs, the lows to maintain a business. I was just blown away and just mesmerized by, because these guys We would talk, how to work a funnel and how to work, Facebook social media ads, and they would just, figure it out real quickly and problem solve very rapidly.
Hmm.
And I was amazed by that, and I wanted to become more of that as much as possible and implement everything that I was learning from all these entrepreneurs as well into my own brand and business that is a completely remote location independent business as well.
So when the business method was formed, is that when you decided there needed to be a podcast? When did you start
Yeah.
taking that
I forgot we were
catalyst?
talking about the podcast,
No,
right?
I got notes. I'll bring us around. I'm keeping track of the time. I got you, baby.
Yeah. No, I was, yeah, so when I was running the entrepreneur house, I wanted a place for really awesome testimonials. So I started a podcast.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, and I was like, what's better, have in live interviews of the people that are at the Entrepreneur House talking about how awesome their experience is at the Entrepreneur House, and have that as a podcast as well.
Right.
And so I did about 30 episodes of those, and then I was like, I really like this podcasting thing. And I had heard like some other people were doing 100-day challenges. And I was like, I wonder if I can do 100 episodes in 100 days with $100,000 entrepreneurs and higher. And I was like, let's do it. And I thought like around 20 episodes or so, I'd have to hunt really far and wide to find these mystical $100,000 entrepreneurs. And they just came flooding in from all over the place. I didn't have to look at all.
Oh,
Somebody would come on the show and they'd have 3 or 4 friends, or, I would just talk to somebody and get a couple, new person or 2 more people on the show. And so I knocked it. I did 101 episodes in 106 days.
nice.
So it was solid. Yeah, and that's what like really launched me in my podcasting career.
So you've done multiple seasons, right? You did the 100,000. You did 6 figures. You done. I love that you do seasons of like 100. It seems like. What made you want to break it up like that? Is it just that you enjoyed the challenge of it, or did?
It all started with that 100-day goal to get 100 episodes out. And then I was like, well, I interviewed 100 6-figure entrepreneurs. I wonder if I can get a hold of 100 7-figure location independent entrepreneurs. Because
Mhm.
at that time, too, there was more properly location independent 7-figure entrepreneurs. I would say 2015, they were few and far. They were
Right.
still kind of like digital nomads with a backpack, making
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if they hit a 6-figure business, it was really awesome. But they started to pop up much more because those people that started traveling the world with their digital online businesses started to build really awesome 7-figure businesses, and even in some cases 8-figure businesses while living in Saigon or Barcelona or Amsterdam or wherever they chose to live. And so I was like, let's do 100 7-figure location independent entrepreneurs. So we did that, which was awesome. And then I was like, well, I'm on a roll of 100, so let's stick with 100, major entrepreneur influencers, which was fantastic. And so I'm thinking I might do 100 people that have built billion-dollar businesses. Next is the official series, but we'll see. I just finished, that 3rd series this past winter, and so I'm not in a rush to dive into another series right now. I'm just enjoying interviewing people
Yeah.
like Adam,
Yeah,
high
yeah, yeah.
performance entrepreneurs, that have built really awesome businesses.
Well, I have to. I'm making certain assumptions, so I'm not going to say that. But I feel I would like. So tell me, you got all these hundreds of people you've interviewed. Is there an interview that stands out? Is there like a favorite one that you're like, this was a crusher? I loved it.
There's ones that were benchmarks that made me think of myself as an entrepreneur and a podcaster, like as the next level. One of them was I reached out to the founder of Squatty Potty, Bobby Edwards.
Oh, cool.
And I was in Brazil at this time, and I was working at this co-working space, and we scheduled the podcast, and I just like blindly cold emailed his team, and they got back, said, yeah, Bobby would love to do a podcast. And so I at the time, that day, the co-working space was really loud, and I'm like, crap, what can I do? Because this isn't going to work. It's just too loud to do a podcast. So I was like, there's an alley outside that I know the Wi-Fi reaches to. Why don't I just like set a table up outside and do the podcast? And so I'm in an alley in Rio de Janeiro, about to interview the most successful entrepreneur that I've got on the podcast. $35 million company in 2016 with 17 employees,
Yeah.
and has this 150 million views on his viral marketing video that they created for Squatty Potty. And I'm nervous, yeah. And so then he hops on, and I don't realize this is going to happen. He hops onto the call. You're hearing like, church bells in the background, and like people
Yeah. Yeah.
honking
Yeah.
and stuff. And he hops on the call, and he had just gotten off The View, which is like
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
one of the most popular daytime talk shows in the United States. And he got off The View, went to his hotel room to do an interview with me, and I'm like, oh my god! And I'm in an alley in Brazil with my laptop, right? And the interview went amazing. Bobby was just the coolest guy. He even started singing on the podcast at one point. The conversation went really well, and I've actually republished that episode a little while back because it just like was such a memorable experience. And yeah, and that was one when I realized that was a podcast. I realized the power of podcast. One, who you could really truly connect with, and two, the my own self, like my own image of myself and how I saw myself as a podcaster, how I saw myself as an entrepreneur, and how really awesome this lifestyle that we were living is. The power of it is phenomenal.
So I love that. Can you dive into transformational talk? So you started this journey. Maybe, I mean, it almost seems like you have the same core Chris through the entire journey, but you're putting on different clothes and you're trying on different, who am I and am I the real estate sales guy? Am I the farmer? Am I and you've got all these different things, but it seems like who you are as a core seems really constant through the whole thing. Am I observing that correctly? Is there a transformation that you feel like that you've gone through, that at the end of 500 episodes versus the beginning, you're a different person, or there's some kind of insights that you've gained that has caused you to live in a different way?
The answer to that is yes. What exactly, which ones we should pinpoint? That's what I'm trying to think about here. Well, first off, like all of those transitions, and I didn't realize this until my 30s, is that they all revolved around me creating a life with more freedom. And I thought at first the farming thing would give me the most freedom that I could create for myself. Then I thought, oh, the real estate investing company could give me the most freedom that I wanted to create for myself. Then I was like, no, the 4-hour work week, like that's the next level, and that's the true thing that I really want to pursue. And I have been following that one for 12 years, I would say, more or less. And so it's always like, what is a thing that can bring me a lot of happiness, a lot of joy, can continually to give me the time freedom that I need, bring in income to keep me fed and to, put some money in the bank account, and also grow my network, because I really loved, meeting new entrepreneurs and going to all these places around the world, and having now, we have a network with, we know people in all these different cities around the world. And like I'm going to Mexico in the next couple of weeks in Playa del Carmen, and I know 20 people in Playa,
Right.
and then I could hop down to Medellin, and I probably know another 20 people that are friends that I consider friends. I could do that, hop down to Rio. I could do that over in Thailand. And so that, for me, that is like not only influence, but like power in
Yeah.
many respects, to have a network and people and a support group in different little places all around the world. Like, how much more could a person want? For me, from my perspective, like that is like the coolest thing in the world. It is what the 4-hour work week defined as the new rich, right?
Yeah.
And so yeah, and all of that was just a transformation of still being that guy that values freedom, still being that guy that values liberty and being an entrepreneur and helping other people grow. But
Mhm.
all of the map of Chris revolved around those core values that were always there, I think.
Well, I think it's interesting too because you're looking for the freedom in a lot of different places. So you did fulfillment through work. You did fulfillment through or freedom through work, freedom through travel. And from what I know about you now, you're doing a lot of internal work. It seems like you're finding freedom by looking inside as well as moving through the world. So how does all of that kind of fit together?
Well, the internal work, like it started from the very beginning. Like
Mm.
it started another reason why I went to grad school is because I just loved learning so much, and I didn't realize you could learn outside of college at the time. I thought like this is the place. I even thought about getting a doctorate. Like I was like, why not? I'm having so much fun here. I'm learning. You're probably not going to learn that much out in the quote unquote real world.
Hmm.
This is a learning hub, and so all of that internal work like started from it was the love of learning. And if people, I think all people really love to learn, they just probably have not chosen the right subjects to learn, because who doesn't love to learn something new that helps them live a better life? Like that's what it's all about, right? And so that was the love and another value that I always had, because internal work was always happening throughout that whole process.
I love that point. Everyone is actually interested in learning. They just haven't found the right subject or they haven't given themselves permission. And so, you know, would you, I guess you're a lifelong learner. Well, I feel like maybe I'm trying to put you in boxes. And from what I know about you, boxes don't seem to work.
Don't put
I
me in
feel
boxes.
like,
Stop these
no, no,
boxes. Yeah.
don't put baby. No one puts baby in the corner. No one puts Chris in a box. So, what's coming up next? What's the intention? So it seems like I love your story arc here. I love the fact that you've just hit so many things. And by the way, there's another kind of professional that I think you would be very good at, and that's like a spy or somebody in espionage, right? You're like, no, I travel the world and I have friends everywhere. I'm in a small town in the middle of the Andes, and I'm like, oh, it's my people. We have fun. It's great. So I feel like if this doesn't work out, feel free to go be like an international man of mystery. I feel like that totally works for you as well.
That's what my parents' neighbors, if they think that I'm doing, actually, because they don't understand it at all.
Oh,
They're
that
like,
is the
he's got to be
best.
in the FBI or CIA or something like this.
He's probably in an agency we've never heard of.
Exactly.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
So what is next? Where are you trying to take the podcast? Where are you trying to take Chris's journey? What does that look like?
For the podcast, like, so, remember I told you I was selling on Amazon in 2009, and I was like, well, if I would have stuck with that, I would have been retired by now. So in late 2019, I did a Vipassana retreat, a meditation retreat, and I was thinking about this. I was like, it's the end of a decade. What was the past decade for me like as an entrepreneur, living in all these different countries around the world? What can I do? What are the few things that I can do over the next decade, henceforth, that can really put me in a position that I really want to be in as a person, as a human, as an entrepreneur, and give me the lifestyle and all the things that I really want in life. And so it was like, okay, if I had a decade commitment to sell on Amazon in 2009, things would be much different for me now.
Yep.
And then so I was like, what's one of the one juicy things that can really take me to an even next level? And I was like, well, if I've been podcasting. This is 2019. I'd been podcasting for 4 years. If I do it for another 10 years, man, the podcast has just got to be. I mean, it's got to be some massive giant, right? Because you're building a mountain, and all the people that I had interviewed would have interviewed over that time period. Hopefully it would be, a extremely recognizable podcast, even if it's not a very influential podcast that's helping a lot of people. I, like yourself, love building communities of entrepreneurs. You can see my history, and that's kind of obvious. And so like let's use the podcast to build the next level, a more community of entrepreneurs that are within our network, and just create more courses that help entrepreneurs. And big into the brain science thing now. We have a brain scanner that helps entrepreneurs optimize their brain performance, which is very next level for high performance, peak performance stuff. And that's really exciting to see. And so all of that mixed up, we'll continue to create more courses. You and I are doing masterminds now for entrepreneurs. And so that's the foreseeable future right now.
I love that. On the underlying of that, all that I'm hearing, you're still learning it so fast and so much. Right?
Yeah, I wish it would go faster, but yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes, learning happens at the pace that it's supposed to happen, I think, when you're putting the right energy out there. And it's not like one of the downsides of learning is the more you know, the more you understand you have no idea. And so I think as you become wiser, learning seems to move slower. There's not as many aha moments, but when you do have them, it's like, that changes everything. So yeah. Wow. I just described learning like building a tolerance to a drug of some kind. That's not where I was going. Stay in school, kids.
Just stay in school. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have enjoyed our chat. I've had you here for around 50 minutes or so. Is there anything else that I should be asking you? Is there any zingers that? Oh, I do have another one. Do we have time for one more?
Please. Yeah.
I want to hear a train wreck. I want to hear a train wreck story of a podcast that either went wrong for technical reasons or and you don't have to drop names. If you can just this one guy, he called in, he was on the toilet. This made no sense. He wasn't ready, anything.
Yeah. Well, so I'm going to say this for anybody that goes on the podcast, your responsibility as a guest is to come up and show up and make a great podcast. Greg Mercer, the founder of Jungle Scout, came on the podcast, and his very first words, he said, "Chris, I'm excited to be here. Let's make a great podcast." And I was like, yeah, I love that mentality. And every show that I've ever been on since then, has been like, I've said that exact same thing. I said, Adam, I'm on the show now. Let's make a great podcast. And so, but your job also as an interviewer is to make the podcast interview great as well. So it helps so much if you have two people that want to make a great episode. There's a lot of interviews I did where I'm just like, mentally in my mind, just like facepalm, this person was not prepared. This person, is not transparent. This person is just not a great talker or interviewee. And it's been really difficult, but sometimes you have to pick and choose like the best parts of that podcast to make a good episode. There was one, man. Oh man, it was torture. I ended up publishing about 25 minutes of the episode, but the guy talked for like an hour and 15 minutes, and he just would not stop talking. And it's okay if you're a long-winded person. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But learn to choose your words wisely, because when people just go down rabbit holes that that nobody really care about, it's not fun for anybody, even if you're doing it in regular life. And so any type of practice where you can learn how to communicate better, tell stories better, it's always a very powerful thing. And also, recently, probably 6 months ago, I interviewed Eric Emitis, who's the founder of WildFit, and he taught me something as well. There's a thing called PPM, pulses per minute. And so pulses are pulses or injections of emotion when speaking to somebody that excited an emotion or saddened an emotion. But whatever it does, it strengthens that makes a person feel emotion. If you can get 6 ppms, pulses per minute, and anytime you speak, you'll be a world-class speaker. And so that's what you want to, if you come on a show, anybody that comes on a show, that's kind of what you want to go for. You don't want to end up, only giving 25 minutes of value and speaking for an hour and 15 minutes when nobody cares what you says. And it's hard to like even interject a word because you keep talking over and over and over. Don't be that guest. Don't be that person in life, actually. Talk to people, give them pulses per minute. What can you say that can excite them? Even if it like evokes some like heartfelt emotions that makes them choke up a little bit, that is awesome. As long as you're not, hurt bullying people, right? You're just
Right,
like
right.
evoking, some sort of emotion out of people. Like it's very powerful. And I think it's a great way to be an interviewee on a podcast.
Well, I would attend that workshop. Chris Reynolds teaches
PPM,
you how teaches you how not to suck as a podcast guest.
Yes. Learn your pulses per minute.
That's right.
Well, pulses per minute. What's that?
Yeah. Well, I have absolutely loved this. This has been a whole lot of fun. I love hearing your story. It is 500 episodes of well-turned phrases, wisdom dropped constantly, powerful charisma coming across. I am. I'm real proud to be able to count you as a friend and to be a part of all this. This is really a cool thing, dude. Well done.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for coming on and interviewing me. That's very, very kind of you. And listeners, we're going to wrap up there. See you on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Take care. Thanks again.